Hey guys, it's Doom49, and I'm going to be going over all the guns and gadgets that we got to see at Gamescom playing Battlefield 1, and these are probably going to be the same guns and gadgets we're going to see in the beta of Battlefield 1, which is very soon. Now, I should mention I did make a video previously for the alpha of Battlefield 1, but this is the updated version of the guns and gadgets, so I think it's important to go over these a little bit again, but I'm going to try to speed through the weapons. If you want to see the more details on the weapons, look in the description for the alpha, but there are extra weapons in this build. To start it off, I need to give you guys some details, and that is that the gray line in the stats indicates the weapon you are currently using, and the other lines indicate the weapon that you're going to be using or hovering over. Looking at the first class, it is the assault class, and the first gun we're looking at is the Model 10A shotgun. The shotgun is extremely lethal at close range, but the factory version of it has less accuracy and increased hipfire, so you do have to decide which one you want to use and what playstyle you're going for. Looking at the next gun, it is the MP18 submachine gun. And something else we'll notice that's different from the alpha to the current build is that there's an experimental version of the gun. And although the damage is the same across the board, the accuracy, hipfire, and control fluctuates between all three guns. But one thing we will notice is that the experimental version has a burst fire mode only for its gun, while the other two have fully automatic modes. And this implies that the experimental version is made for medium to long range, artillery for any type of use you want to go for, and the trench version is definitely better for close quarters combat. Now, we'll see this recurring trend throughout all the other guns, but I do need to mention that although artillery is the balance between the two close quarters and long range gun, keep in mind that it is not perfect at long range and close range. That's why there are three total versions, and it really comes down to the map you're playing and the playstyle you're going for. Now, looking at the Automatico M1918, this is another submachine gun, and I do need to mention that the light infantry, although it looks like the stats are similar to the factory version, it's actually different. The light infantry has slightly better accuracy and more control. So ultimately, it seems like once you get the light infantry submachine gun, you're definitely not going to be using the factory version of it. And also, the trench version is really good for close quarters combat, being that it has amazing hipfire, and this thing shoots really fast. As we move on to look at the pistols, we can see that the M1911 has slightly more damage than the P08 pistol and even has less ammunition, but the rate of fire is exactly the same. In this build for the assault class, we're going to see two new gadgets, one of which is the dynamite, and it's sticks of dynamite that can be placed and detonated on demand, effective against structures, vehicles, and infantry. I should mention this dynamite does not stick. If you throw it on a tank, it will not stick on it. It can fall off. The second gadget is the AT mine. AT mines that will explode and cause significant damage when traversed by enemy vehicles. I found this to be extremely effective against the train when trying to take the enemy out. I'm not going to be going over all the grenades or the other two gadgets that I skipped over, as I went over them in the alpha, and if you guys want to see that video, look in the description as it goes over those gadgets and those grenades. But for now, we're going to be skipping to the melee weapons. But I will mention that the anti-tank grenade changed to a light anti-tank grenade and looks different. Now, as we go through the melee weapons, you can notice that damage, speed, and kill zone changes. Damage is pretty obvious. Speed is the speed at which you can swing that weapon, and kill zone is the distance between you and the enemy into which you can hit them. Now, you'll also notice there are extras, and there are three symbols. The first symbol being the saw implies that you can chop wood with that melee weapon. The light tank actually refers to the light infantry vehicles, meaning that you can actually damage jeeps and other vehicles, except you can't damage tanks, and I think they'll be changing the symbol soon. And also, the last one that looks like a barbed wire is pretty self-explanatory. You can cut barbed wire with that melee weapon. And to be completely honest with you guys, I am really loving what they've done with the melee weapons, especially with the extras. Now you can interact with your environment and do some damage to it, as well as get past that annoying barbed wire and even do damage to vehicles if you're out of grenades. Now, something else I will mention is that knives tend to have the lowest damage but have the highest speed and kill zone, whereas heavier damaging weapons have the lowest speed and lowest kill zone. Now, moving on to the medic, we can see that the C. Rigotti has the artillery and factory version with a total of 2 fire modes, while the artillery has only slightly better accuracy, and in that case, I recommend you use it in fully automatic fire mode, whereas the factory version, you should use it in the semi-automatic mode. The next gun is something new. It's the Selbstlader M1916 sharpshooter. It is originally designed for use on planes. This German semi-automatic rifle is known for its high accuracy. Now, the difference we see here between the artillery and the sharpshooter is that the sharpshooter has higher accuracy than the artillery version. And I do need to mention, since it is new weapons that we're seeing in the beta build, we're probably going to be seeing it balanced throughout time. But as it stands, you definitely want to use the sharpshooter. Moving on to the M1907 SL, the automatic version has better control and it also has 2 different fire modes, whereas the factory version only has a semi-automatic fire mode. So you're definitely going to be going for the automatic version as it makes your life a lot easier, and I haven't seen a different scope on either gun. In general, some of these guns might have weird looking stats, but it's because of the scope on the gun. This gun doesn't even have a scope. Finally, the last gun for the medic is the Mondragon, and you can notice that the marksman version has higher accuracy and higher control. And I will mention this weapon is more like a DMR type of gun, and yes, the marksman means there is going to be a better scope for long range, whereas the artillery doesn't really have a long range scope, so it depends on your playstyle you're going for. Skipping over the pistols and going to the gadgets, I won't be going over the medical syringe or the bandage pouch, as I've already gone over that in my previous video, which you can find in the description, but we have a medical crate, and it's once placed, this medical crate will heal wounded nearby infantry, which is something we've seen in previous battlefields, but we also see rifle, grenade, fragmentation, smoke, and HE. Now, all of these are rifle launch, meaning this is going to be an attachment to your gun, and it won't affect the bayonet on the front, but I need to mention that the HE version is used to fight vehicles and infantry. It has a high blast radius, but less effective against infantry. The smoke obviously is going to be used to provide cover for you to get into open areas where you need that cover, and the fragmentation grenade is really powerful against infantry, but does very little damage to vehicles. As we move on to the support class, we notice the Lewis gun, and there's an artillery and low weight version, and the difference is the accuracy, but something that we don't see in the stats is that both of these guns have different scopes, whereas the artillery has more of a long range scope and the low weight version has a close range scope. Now I should also mention that when bipoded, this is very powerful, and the other thing is the artillery version is definitely heavier than the low weight version. So these are things you need to consider when looking at all other guns as well, because although these stats do not tell us certain things, you need to consider the weight, and I would definitely love to see a weight implemented into the stats so we know how fast we are able to run with it in case we want to go in open areas with such a gun. The next gun is the M1909 Bennett Mercy, and something I did notice between the alpha to the beta build is that the accuracy and control of this gun has been completely reworked and improved, and that means you definitely want to be using the gunner version. However, the gunner is really good for mounting as opposed to running in there like the light infantry. It has less weight for the light infantry version. So again, it's your playstyle and go for it. Moving on to the Madsen MG, we notice they're both used for close quarters combat, one being light infantry and one being trench, although trench has significantly higher hip fire, whereas the light infantry has a little bit better control. I will mention, since the magazine is on the top of the gun, it makes it really disorienting for aiming down sight. In that case, I recommend using this thing on hipfire, and because of that, you're definitely going to want to use the trench version. And although you do take a little bit of a blow to the control on the gun, it's still significantly better than the light infantry. The final machine gun we're going to see in the game, and this is something new we haven't seen in the alpha, is the MG15NA light infantry and suppressor version. The MG15NA is a belt-fed light machine gun similar to heavier tripoded or vehicle-mounted weapons while remaining portable. Looking at the stats, the suppressor version has better accuracy, better control, and even more ammunition in the gun. This means this thing is definitely really good for mounting with the bipod to start taking out enemies from a distance, although you can run and gun with it. However, you are going to be punished with the fact that the suppressor version is heavier than the light infantry, meaning you're not going to run as fast. As for the gadgets, I've already gone over them in my previous video. However, there's also an ammo crate now, and it's similar to previous battlefields, which allows you to resupply more than just bullets to your teammates and can resupply explosives. As we move on to the scout class, the rifle and its counterpart have the exact same stats, and I go over these in the alpha video, so look in the description for the link of that. But something we do need to notice is the SMLE carbine has better hipfire than the sharpshooter. However, there are two new sniping rifles, which is the Gewehr M95 Rifleman and Sharpshooter. It's a straight pull bolt action rifle that allows for a high rate of fire even when used with a scope. Now, the stats seem very similar together, and the only difference I can come up with is that there is a different scope on each gun. This should also be noted for all other guns, and I think stats on knowing whether a gun has a quick scope or not is needed, but at the same time, I think it's something where you need to play and learn it as you go. There's a total of 2 new gadgets we see, but one of them is the flare gun flash. This flare gun shoots brightly burning projectiles, blinding players looking at them from nearby. And this thing is actually pretty powerful. It's like a flash grenade, except it lasts forever, so it can be used to cover you or help you be able to blind the enemy to take them out. The spot version of this only allows you to spot enemies in the minimap. It has a small radius where you can see them in that radius. The cable that we mentioned before does damage to vehicles, whereas the new gadget that we see is the spotting scope. The spotting scope is a scope that can be used to look across cover safely and to mark enemies for your squad mates. You should also note that this can actually be used to look over fences or walls while you're up close to a wall and the enemy won't be able to see you. And that sums it up for all the loadouts and gadgets we're going to see in Battlefield 1 for the open beta. If you guys want to hear more about other gadgets or other weapons, look in the description for the alpha version of the loadout where it does go over other gadgets that haven't changed for the beta. And that sums it up, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and click that subscribe button for more awesome content, and check out some other videos on screen, and I'll catch you guys later.